Capture the passion.
Welcome to CPTP Season 2, Episode 8. And today we're bringing back some of our guests to have a roundtable discussion about education. We have Mr. Jim Goodrich and Mr. Daniel Solis. So let's start talking about it. Where do you see education now, and where do you think it's headed?
Well, we before we got on, we were talking about how like COVID really ruined, hampered progress of a lot of the kids. In essence, took away a year of education, and for me personally, I saw it firsthand with my girlfriend's daughter. Not only just physically, she got a little bit heftier, but also, the discipline. The routine was completely thrown off. The previous year before that, towards the end of their school year, she had to stop going to school, right? In April, they had completely stopped the in-person meetings, and so I feel that this pandemic really pointed out the weaknesses within our educational system. Really exacerbated the ones we already had before.
Right.
And now, you see exodus of teachers not wanting to come back. As a matter of fact, I had one of my cousins out in Arizona wanting to leave because the kids were not showing any level of respect, if there was any before that. The parents were demanding more from them. And it was worse because, again, with, the conflicts between the school districts and unions, not only here, but around the nation. Right. A lot of them had just finished bargaining for a new contract. And it's like, okay, now you just finished, you got, whatever, X 5% within the next 5 years. Now you got to, prove it, why we're giving you so much more money. Yeah. And if you come on, you start out with a pandemic, first year coming back from that, it's a lot of stress. So I feel like more on the administrative side, like the curriculum, all that is, I think, second. But first is the education itself, like we're talking like the funding and all that. Now people are gonna be like, okay, well, let's see, what we're gonna do. The pandemic was a great example. Let's see how we act under pressure. Right. And I feel like that really tested, and it's gonna test education for a while. Hopefully, the batch of students that are going through the credentialing and all that see those errors and try to fortify themselves against that in the future. If we, and hope not, if we have anything similar to this. So those are my thoughts on education.
I think it was a kind of a reality check. There was a lot of things that I thought as a system we were taking for granted that made us sort of like check ourselves. A lot of us needed to learn technology all over. Zoom, uploading documents and deadlines and plagiarism at the university level. It was really frustrating. And you mentioned about children at home. I read a lot about the different types of roles that parents needed to take in. Yeah. So they were not just working from home, they were parenting from home, and then they were teachers at home. And then on top of that, they had to be IT also when the internet dropped or reconnecting. Maybe I didn't have a good enough device to be able to run Zoom. That actually happened to me. It was a meeting that I was with you in Peach, where my laptop was a very dinosaur laptop that I couldn't log into Zoom. It just didn't have the capacity. So I was doing it through my phone, and then I'm taking notes on my computer, and it's like, this is just so frustrating. Yeah. It was so frustrating being a teacher at home, IT, parent, working from home, meeting all these expectations that I can't imagine what children went through. I saw my daughters doing it, and I think the only thing that I appreciated from this pandemic was being home. Being at home with them, not worrying about the commute, the traffic. Yeah. That was a blessing in disguise for me. But man, it was tough. What was it like for you, Jim?
Well, first of all, hats off to parents and teachers, and that was tough. That was tough. The amount of stress that everyone was going through, it's amazing we made it out the other side. There's not more like people, running around in straitjackets. because it was tough. It was just tough. And then having to, from the teaching university, again, all the things you mentioned, I mean, for me, I thrive in the engagement with my students and the energy that's exchanged. It's really hard to have that energy through an Ethernet. It just doesn't. It's not the same. And half the time they don't turn the camera on anyway. So it was just tough. I mean, I can only tap dance so fast to keep you engaged. So just the fact that these teachers and the parents had to play all these different roles, it's amazing to me. So hats off to all you people.
And I think the roles that we talked about in our previous episode about knowing what you're teaching. So for a lot of the parents, and yes, hats off to all the parents that busted their rears to get their children out of this pandemic, or we're still in it, but overcoming it. Not really knowing and understanding of how to do it. So one of the biggest clashes that I had with my girl's mom was the way she learned math versus the way I learned math versus the way my daughters are learning math.
Yeah.
So then it's like, Brianna's like, but Mom, Dad, I didn't learn it like that. The teacher showed us like this. And it's like, yeah, but if you do it this way, then you still get the same answer. And Mom's an accountant, and she's like, but if you do it this, and it's like, oh, so poor Brianna, they're just, I'm just going to do it on my own. So hats off to the kids, too.
Yeah, oh, yeah, hats off to the kids, too. I mean, they didn't ask for that.
No, not at all.
They did not ask for that.
So. And again, like with my little girl, she... I still I don't know how she did it, being cooped up in that house for 7 days, you're not able to go out during that time too. Yeah. So like we were talking about, like that, just the level of interactions with other people, her social skills, I mean, were hit hard too. Yeah. I mean, besides academics, that just the level of the, just social norms, they don't know those rules anymore. They have to act it out. As a matter of fact, with some of my students that I have, as a home visitor, a lot of them scored low in social emotional development. I look at their dates of birth and it's like December 2019, April 2020, exactly. And a lot of them were, before, no one knew this was going to happen, Right. So I saw the ones that were already, a few months old, hit the hardest than the ones that were born during the pandemic, because that's what they were born into. And so I always tell the parents, you try your best to just spend time with them, sing with them, talk to them, try to stay away from the TV as much as possible, which is difficult, because that's what we use to
entertain them.
Yeah, entertain them, right? Or more like distract them, right? Than leave us alone. Yeah. But I think that the level of education that parents have now, it's funny. One of the parents a while back, when I worked at a different university, told me, I think parents need to have a child development degree before they have kids. I agree.
But here's a question: who's going to teach those child development classes? You. Thank you. I don't know about that, but it's because now there's I think that teaching child development is not just knowing child development, but it's actually knowing who you are, knowing what drove you to want to study. To me, my obviously biased opinion is at ELAC, go Huskies. I needed to take a class, and it was an elective, so I took Child Development 1. And as I was pretty much figuring out which one should I take, well, I want to know about myself. I want to know why I think that way. I want to know why I am the way I am. And that class, theory, just helped me put things in perspective. So it's like, man, this is deep. This makes a lot of sense into why my experiences as a child has formed me now as an adult. So, a lot of the times I think we fail to put that out there when parents are struggling with their children. What was your parenting, what was your childhood like?
Yeah.
Did you have any type of adverse experiences that were never addressed that now you're manifesting on your child? Exactly. And then this is obviously the cycle of abuse that continues to happen. It's that dynamic isn't addressed, I don't think, in a child development class. So how do we need to have maybe some form of criteria before you're a parent, or what? I mean, what's your take, Jim?
Um, that's a loaded question. I mean, I was friend people say that's easy. You have to get a driver's license to drive a car, but not to have to have a child.
Yeah, that's
Because they
another
don't come with. At least your driving test comes with a book. The
rules.
teacher. It doesn't. I mean, it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't know. There has to be some kind of. I think it kind of goes back. Why aren't they teaching that in high school?
Right.
Why aren't they teaching self-reflective courses or self-development in high school, where you really have to start chipping that away? Because let's focus on that. Again, I think what happens is the social emotional piece falls apart in middle school and high school when it's the most difficult, when you need it the most, because it's no picnic. At very least, that would help people at least be able to have some part of their life they've self-reflected where they kind of go, wow, do I want to bring a child into my current state of affairs, and what that's going to do. So, I don't know. That's.
What about sex education, though? Because look, I don't know what yours is like, but I'm going to tell you mine. And I share it in one of the classes that I teach. We talk about child sexual abuse. And my theory, it's not research-based, it's just my observation, is that children that have been victimized from CSA, child sexual abuse, really don't have an understanding of what their sexuality is. Now, I'm not talking about the act of sex. I'm talking about your DNA, which is your sexuality, right? So if I don't know what is appropriate or what's not appropriate, then how am I supposed to know someone is violating me?
Yeah.
Right? So then I think back to, well, what was my sex ed like? My sex ed was I learned how to put condoms on fruits. And I learned to be afraid of an STI. Didn't talk about my emotions. Didn't talk about healthy relationships. Didn't talk about building a bond with someone else. It just pretty much scared me straight into it. So is that something else that maybe our education system needs to reconsider?
My sex education was when I was in 5th grade, so I laughed all the way through. I had that uncomfortable laughter in the whole thing, and they mentioned a potty part, and you're like, completely childish. And I'm still laughing about it now. But yeah, again, it goes back to not dealing with the social emotional part of sexuality, and again, when kids are victims of that, they have no understanding of what's happening to them and why. So they get a very skewed sense of what affection is, what love is, and that's the damaging part. And then it goes back to, well, if I'm not being treated this way, then I'm not being loved because that's what I know. So it's just devastating with what happens to kids under that circumstance. But you're right. I mean, going back to education, it has to be more about how to put on a condom or take a pill. It has to go back to, why are you in this? Or what responsibility do you take on if you're going to do something like that? Because, especially if you're in your 20s or teens, you're just pretty much a walking hormone at that point. So you have to be able to make sense of that and be able to self-regulate that kind of thing. So, but again, we're not taught how to do that.
Right.
And from a home-based perspective, it's important that the parents know this. Like I have a lot of the, it's part of a curriculum where we have to go over child abuse, right? And I tell them about the difference. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was child abuse." Like, yeah, exactly. And the parents need to. They feel that again, schooling or the teachers are going to be the ones teaching them this stuff, the manners and all that. It's like, no, it comes from home. The curriculum we use is called Parents as Teachers, and so we're giving them like an overview of behaviors that are typically demonstrated in certain phases of the child's growth. From 0 to 1, 1 to 3, whatever. And so we tell them this is what's typical, right? Doesn't mean if your child's not doing it that they're delayed or that just give them time. That's and you'd be surprised how many parents would be like, "Wait, a child could do that?" As a matter of fact, I've just a few years ago I went to get an exam. I went to a cardiologist, and he asked me like, "Hey, what do you do?" It's like, "Well, I'm a preschool teacher. I technically an early Head Start teacher." And he goes, "Oh, but you mean like you teach them colors and triangles?" Like, no. I'm working with babies 0. Well, at that point it was 3 to 3 years, and it was 3 months to 3 years. What are you teaching them? Are they learning? And it's like,
you're a doctor. How do you not know this?
I was in. That's like, oh gosh, this is again someone that went to school and got a degree, and I was like, I don't know what to expect from families from lower income, that are a little more impoverished.
Lack
So
of
it's like,
resources.
so when I go into those homes, I just I'm not at this point. I'm not surprised, but the level of understanding is minimal.
But let's throw something in there. We were talking about this before we came on about technology.
Yeah.
I mean, technology can be so detrimental, but at the same time, if we use it properly, it can be so useful.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know about you, Daddy, but I don't want to date ourselves here, Jim. But back in at least when I was in school, for me to do research,
Careful.
Daddy, come on.
Back when the Titanic sank. Yeah.
At Cal State LA, when I had to do research there as an undergrad student, I had to go to the library and go down like 2 or 3 levels, and then pull out that little drawer and go through the index cards.
Yes.
And then pull it out, and then I had to write whatever that index card. Okay, go to this level, go to this shelf, and I had to look for, I don't know if it's the ISBN number or whatever a number. I had to go look to that, and I tell the students now, man, you guys got it in your hand, so
get me started with this.
So how is it that, again, technology can be so useful that in situations like that? Yes, I understand that certain demographics might not have access to it, but let's just say that through schooling they do. Yeah. Right? You come to a home visit, you bring your technology with them, you can show them the resources, you can print them out for them. So if technology and research and information is so available to us, why are we using it the way we should to help better our children and essentially to better society?
I don't know. I mean, this comes up for me because, again, we had to do old school. I mean, in fact, I remember when there was like, what do they call those maps we used to have to use? Everyone had a Thomas Guide.
Oh, Thomas Guide.
Before we had maps, you actually had to go into a book and map it out and do the quadrants and all this kind of thing. And now it's like, you just put it in your phone. You can just go. So it boggles my mind sometimes in that, because technology, especially in universities, there's so much technology out there. And plus, because of the phone, when people come up and ask me a question, like, for instance, how do I apply for a teaching credential? And I'm more than happy to tell them, because I'm an advisor on that. But I'm like, you have Google.
Exactly.
There's no question you probably can't get answered or get some kind of perspective on.
Yeah.
Everything is literally at your fingertips. And if I go back to when I was their age, again, we didn't have Google. We didn't really have cell phones, or they were like this big. Let me get my cell phone out of my briefcase. So I don't know why that's happening still. Like, there's so much out there, and it's literally at your fingertips, and still we seem to get this learned helplessness when there's no excuse for it.
Learned helplessness.
So what is that about?
First time I heard of this. What is this? Learned helplessness.
Well, it's just not taking. And again, maybe this goes back to education. I don't know, or it goes back to parenting. It's like saying, "Hey, I don't know, but I can find out, and I know what the tools are to use."
Oh.
Where it's like, I'd rather just easier just ask somebody.
Yeah, I might as well just.
And I get it all the time.
Yeah, why should I research it when I can ask you?
When I can just ask you, and it's not like not wanting to be helpful, but it comes back to, again, agency and taking initiative and having control and learning, having it be a learning process. Let me learn about it the organic way rather than just, I'm just going to shortcut. I'll just ask.
Well, okay. So when I first met you, probably the second year, you asked me how was your schooling, right? I was still a substitute teacher assistant at the school that I started working with, George, and I told him the best way I could describe it was military. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I sat down, the teacher told me what to do. So again, you took away. I mean, for me, I felt like I was the like you were mentioning in the previous episodes, they took away the art of learning. That you learn a lot more through a question than actually the answer. And I feel like I've been, and it's not the fault of the teacher or anything. I love my teachers, but we were taking away the ability to be to love the process and not care so much about the result of it. Now we're more oriented towards the answer and less about the way we got to the answer.
We got to make a bumper sticker out of that. You learn more by the questions you ask than the answer that you're getting.
Exactly.
That's an argument in itself. So for education as a whole, what's more important, the process or the product? Mm-hmm. And to many people, it's like, I don't care. I just want my degree. Right. I can get my C's. I can get a 2.0. Just give me that paper with that university stamp, and I'm good. And then you have others where it's, I'd rather learn through each and every class, learn something. And yeah, the degree's fulfilling, but man, my mind has just broadened so much. Now I have so much. Now I have this wealth of knowledge that I can go out there and really be impactful with it. So, what would be more important to you as an educator of for your university, for your students? Do you see them process versus product? Well, first, let's hear your perspective teaching it, and then what do you see your students aiming for?
I see a combo of both. Okay. I will see some students in there that I can tell they're hungry. Mm-hmm. They're hungry, and they're taking advantage of the moment that they have to get that education so they can be effective. Yeah. I always refer to this book when I do my administration classes, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the 7 habits, the last one is sharpen the saw. And do you know about that?
No, I know about the book.
Yeah. So sharpen the saw, where it's about trying to stay current and balanced. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I see is I'll see some students who are they want to know the why behind everything. Yes. Instead of just accepting the answer. Yeah. And that's why, I'm always saying, find your voice, find your questions, find what you need to want to know about. What's the mystery you're trying to solve? And it has to be a mystery.
So what if I don't know how to ask the why? How do you help me start burning that fire?
That's when you really have to dig a little deeper.
Okay.
And you have to, it's such a loaded question. I mean, it really has to come down to the core of who it's not really about the content. It's about it goes back to your value and how effective do you want to be and why do you want to be effective? So that's the question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to kind of gear that question back into like education, I have parents ask me like, well, what can I do if my child doesn't want to, leave the diaper? It's like, well, how old is your child? Oh, it's just a year and 2 months. It's like, okay, well, do you think they're ready? Like, let's go over the signs of them showing you that they're ready. So I ask them questions, and then a lot of I see some that disengage, and like, he's not going to give me the answer. Yeah. It's like, again, I think technology also plays a role too, because like you said, Google is there. You don't have to work hard. Just go google.com and then you put your question. You don't even have to type it up. You just put G now and it pops up. So it takes away again, like back when you were still steam trains and stuff like that. You had to. You had to work to get to the book. You had to write down. You had to go to, like you said, with the dungeons with the bats and everything, and get the number.
He's really dating us.
Exactly. So you had to work, and you're not gonna put in 15, 20 minutes just to locate the darn little index card and write down the number.
You had to work.
You had to work, and then you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go get that book now. So now it's just like, it's not here. Okay. Again, Cal said I just walk up to the front, type it in. Oh, they checked that out too.
So it reminds me of a fundamental for that talks about low cost, right? It sounds like the less I work for it, then the easier it is for me.
Exactly.
But I don't care about it because I just want that end result. Yeah. Versus it requires more work, but it's going to be more impactful. It's going to be such a learning process for you. Do you think that society is probably more towards that low cost? I really don't want to invest. I really don't care. And maybe the question should be, is it really that we're not utilizing technology in an effective way?
I believe technology has been corrupted. I mean, what's one of the things we always talk about when we talk about technology? It's just like social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook. I'm not saying it's bad, but it does take away from the actual things you could do with it, the potential of these devices.
Yeah.
Cloud. Like all these things, like this, like it's the way we've progressed from like 10 years ago to now. It's like it's a lot.
It's in the cloud.
It's in the cloud, right? But it just moves so fast. I think that too. I mean, you have to give the benefit to the doubt. Everything's just boom, 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 boom. I mean, back when you were like, do emails, right? It's like something knob. Like, what is this? What's an email, right? Till now, like it's only been like 35 years from the first email sent out till now. Now we have emails in our phones, so everything moves fast, and then everything's so just easily accessible, so fast.
I read something about social media, and you brought it up and prompted that thought into social media. We talked about the social media was meant to connect people all over the world, but at the same time, we sort of feel like if we're disconnecting.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, and I think this goes back to the whole question about the process of learning. Yeah. Everything is so much more superficial now. It's so much more surface level. So when you talk about, I just want the piece of paper, it's very superficial. Yeah. When you're doing texting, it tends to be superficial because you're not getting into the real, getting in deep to more, like it's hard to have conversations like this over text because it's just too much work. Right. It's just too much work. But it goes back to with the degree, but this is the meat of deep thinking, not us. But I mean, I don't want to say that to myself. But this is when you start getting into having these connections, and then you start having connections with what you're learning, and it's not just about the answer. What you're finding is, there's a destination I need to get to, but it's like a tree, and all these different branches are able to happen because you're going through a process. You're going up that tree to get to that place. But if you're just focused only on that place, and you're only maybe just doing snippets, because if someone says, here's the answer, here's your degree, but you've left out all the branches that are there that actually make learning holistic. Yeah. Right. So it goes back to, what are your values? What do you value?
So how do we place that value at a very young age? Or, I mean, it's sort of like what came first, chicken or the egg, because we're going to go round and round with it, but what would be a good starting point for this? Do we have to reconsider how we're educating our teachers at the universities? Do we have to look at parenting and how they're parenting and take culture into account? Because culture is a big influence.
It's huge.
It's probably over 51% of it into how a person's mind is developed. Yeah. Or do we take it into the classrooms already and inject it with our youngest learners at the preschool level into helping them develop this value? I mean, do we start at every one of those phases? Where do we go?
To me, it goes back to relationships. That's where it goes to. It goes to relationships, because in my classes, or especially when I'm bringing new employees, and I said, who was your favorite teacher? Which teacher made the most impact on you? And 9 times out of 10, it was the one they had the deepest relationship with. And from that relationship, that's where you learn empathy. That's where you learn respect. It comes from that. So if you don't have that, as parents with your kids, and if you don't have that teacher or someone who is a mentor that takes the extra time to kind of figure out what's going on here, what's happening here, and I want to know, and I want to guide you, or I want to, help get you to the next place, but from here, not from here.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where I think you cultivate that feeling, because to be able to understand each other and to be able to have conversations, you realize the impact that you make. This is getting deep. But this is where you realize the impact you're making, how important relationships are, and say, see, so how is the teacher that influenced you, how's it going to influence your practice? And there 9 times out of 10, it's like, well, it really encourages me to really get to know my students. And when you take that student and you put him on that pedestal, or you put him in that high level of respect, I think that cultivates a wanting to have a deeper understanding of life
And that's I was going to get into that. And you're talking about relationships. Having a relationship with the teacher is obviously important academically, but if you know how to have a healthy relationship with the teacher, then you're probably going to know how to build healthy relationships with everyone else.
Yeah.
You're going to have healthy relationships with people that you admire.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a healthy relationship with a partner.
Yeah.
Then eventually you form a family, and guess what? You're going to have a healthy relationship with your child.
Correct.
And so yeah, I love that. Like you can inject that in every single one in preschool,
Everyone.
in K-12, higher ed, individually.
And sometimes it's tough.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's tough. And some students you're going to reach, and some students you might not be able to reach. But the point is, you still have to keep approaching it from that
Right.
perspective. I always go back to you could be someone's protective factor.
Mhm.
You know, it's those. Again, I go back to the study they did. I think it was in Hawaii, where they took 500 kids who were at risk, the same kind of at risk. You know, socioeconomic status, maybe incarceration of parents, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
And what they found, they did this longitudinal study, and they found that half of them didn't do real well and were incarcerated themselves, drug use, and the other half lived well. They lived, they loved, they worked, they contributed to society, and they found that it was because whatever it was, they had one person. If it wasn't a parent, it was a teacher, it was a clergy, it was someone who believed in them and took interest in them and developed a really deep relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes back to, it's the relationship that you have with your students that is critical.
Yeah. So let's ask you that question.
So I'll go back to the interaction we had back in 2012 where you asked me, hey, how are we going to change the educational system? And I said, oh, well, we have to come up with something very
Profound.
Yeah, no. It was very, I was just like, okay, well, let's see. I'm going to say something he wants me to say. So I said, I got to come up with a 12-point plan, get to know the right people. And he's just shaking his head the whole time. He's just like, he failed me, and I was like, okay, well, then how do you change it? And he goes, if you want to see change around you, you have to change within yourself. And I think it went back to values for me. Mm-hmm. When you said that, it's the values. What do you value? And it better be worth it, because money is going to come and go, right? Material stuff doesn't matter. Clothes, whatever, it's all gone. So I think, because I go to these houses, and it's not their fault, it's their circumstances, right? They're hungry for money instead of knowledge, because knowledge will bring you that. Yeah. It's you find whatever it is you like doing, and money will follow. But people don't understand it because, again, it takes effort. Mm-hmm. It takes time. Creating relationships takes time. Mm-hmm. Trial and error. It's like you got to go at it. You got to go at it. And the same, I think, again, education-wise, I feel like a lot of these programs, they put a nice name on them, but when it really comes out to practicing it, it's not. It's not what it was meant to be, And I feel that a lot of these, for me, again, working with these families, they believe my children's got to be ready for school. And it's like, no, your child needs to be able to communicate effectively with you. Mm-hmm. Your child has food, protection from you guys, shelter. Yeah. Good. Please don't stress too much on the whole academic. Yeah. They'll come with time. Yeah. But again, the values.
See, it's what I hear you talk, and what I see is society getting paranoid about, is my child ready for school, as opposed to, is the school ready for my child? Mm-hmm. Because my child is this brain ready to absorb knowledge. And hopefully that's good knowledge to be able to build healthy relationships, to have that long-term success. But I'm curious to ask you, and I'll ask you too, Jen. Do you remember which teacher had the most impact with you?
Yes.
Well. I wasn't his teacher though.
No. In high school, I had Mr. Jason Agliolo. He taught math. He taught.
Okay. I remember this. Yes. Go share it, please.
Pre-cal and calculus. Yes. So at this point, I didn't need those classes. Mm-hmm. I was just kind of just going because I had to go. I didn't want to get out of school early. So I took pre-cal with him, and I failed. I went to summer school. I took it with a different teacher. So my senior year, I took calculus, and he knew we were all just kind of goofing around. Didn't really care. I remember every day he would give us odd number problems in the textbook because they didn't have the answer in the back. So every day he would always expect at least a handful of us to be like, hey, Mr. Jason, we need to solve this problem. So then I remember one of my classmates asked, like, "Hey, can we do this one?" And I see him writing down what he's writing on down on the board, and we were just again we were all talking. The Lakers were just came up from a championship, so we're all stoked, like, "Oh, Lakers are 16-0." And I remember he's he'll just probably has two kids that are engaged with him. And he finishes doing the problem, and he asks him, "Hey, did you even do it?" He goes, well, I kind of did it." "No, you didn't." So he looked at the rest of us, and I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but he said, "I don't care about the Lakers. I care about you guys. And I don't care if they win or lose, right? Right now, what's important is your education, because that matters more than what the Lakers or anyone else is doing outside of this classroom." And that for me always left me impressed. Like, I was like, oh, he really cared. And as a matter of fact, I reached out, and sadly, he left schooling because of the same thing.
Same thing, burned out.
He burned out.
Jim?
My favorite teacher? I was blessed because every single one of my elementary school teachers, and I'll try not to cry, was amazing.
Where'd you
was
go?
amazing. Linwood Howe Elementary School, so Culver City. Every one of them made an impact on me. Every one of them, all for different reasons. I was really, really fortunate because my preschool experience was not positive, and I won't even go into that. But yeah, I mean, I learned something from all of them. So those who are still on the planet, thank you very much. Those who are not, bless you. Yeah, all of them are.
I think back to my most impactful teacher, Mr. Smith. He passed probably about 10 years ago, and he just built a relationship with me, and to me was always sports. And he developed this organized games during PE and recess, where the fifth and sixth graders we were put in teams, and we would have a tournament. And to me, I thrived on that. And I think back to, why did I understand math better in fifth and sixth grade versus previous? Because sports and his whole philosophy. So I wanted to be in his class, and I was. And now as a teacher, whether it be with the youngest ones or the older ones, higher ed, it's about building those relationships and going back to, I believe in you. And I tell my students that every single time, I believe in you. And I tell them, you might not believe that I believe in you, but I want you to know that you are here, and that matters to me. And that tells me that you want to make something of yourself. So just know, if no one has ever told you, I believe in you. And I've gotten emails about past students. Hey, I applied to this university that I didn't think I had a shot, and I got in. 2 years later, I graduated, and they sent me their grad picture, and it's like, man, that has got. It feels good now that we are in that teacher role to be able to see our students thrive, right? So if we can see that happening, what advice can we give to other teachers to build these types of relationships, because they're impactful?
You have to see potential. You have to be able to see potential, and you have to, I know there's certain people, like I even said, I know you said the same thing. You might not see it, but I see it. And trying to let them know. And they like, I had one student, I said, no, you're finishing your bachelor's degree program. I see you teaching university.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? I'm like, just trust me. I see you teaching university. And now that student's going for their master's, and now they're like, that's where I'm going. And it's just, I think, because someone saw something in them that no one else maybe, and I'm not saying I have any innate, like, special skill, but again, it's about when you see the core of who somebody is, and you kind of go, yeah, you have the passion. You're gonna do great things. You might not see it because you're buried in other things right now, but it's there, and you'll discover it too.
I believe it's learning to give the trust and gaining the trust from someone else. I would give that advice to go just a little bit more than what you're expected to do, because that means a lot to the individual, to the family, to the student. If you could just open up the doors, as let's say you're a teacher at elementary, you open up your doors at 7:30, open at 7, give them a chance to get in there and have a seat and just kind of connect with you. I think it's giving the trust to that person and being able to gain that trust from them, because that's the only way I've been effective with these parents. That they're like, hey, well, you're right, teacher.
Yeah.
I'll go get food for them and drop it off without having to ask them. And they're like, he cares.
Yeah.
And that's the way you gain, like you said, when you taught me a while back, it's if you make a child laugh, you got them. You're good.
Yeah.
So for obviously with an adult, it's not that easy. You have to go a little bit more. It's a little bit more deep.
Right.
So I would give those teachers an advice and be like, learn how to give the trust and learn how to gain it. Learn to, like, again, it's going with what Jim was saying, create that relationship with them.
Yeah. And I'm gonna bring all this back into relationships. I really love that point, Jim. If you look at the three of us coming together in this round table, we knew each other without knowing we knew each other. So yeah, I met you. You were subbing at the school where I was working, and then I like to acknowledge that we've built a very wonderful friendship. And yes, we're not 24/7 always talking on the phone or texting or email or whatnot, but the mutual respect that's there, it exists because I know that in my darkest times, I know that I have support and I have a support system. So with you, it was just genuine the way our relationship started. Little did I know that our conversation would have such a huge impact, and both ways reciprocate as much as it was to you, as much as it was to me. And then when I met Jim, it was like right off the bat. Although you were very intimidating at first, standing in the doorway, just take your time.
Really?
When we started talking, I think it was the first interaction was through email. And then during that email exchange, it was like, wait, he's the one that sends outside the door. And they was like, Jim, all this time. And then we developed that relationship that I am very grateful for. You have helped me so much, directly and indirectly, that what I've taken from you professionally, I've helped others in their profession because they tell me like, oh, I never thought about that. Like, well, Jim told me, students, oh, I need to take this class. Take it with Jim. Really? Is he hard? Is he? He's going to challenge you and he's going to change you. Take it with Jim. Then sweet. You guys were...
Yeah, not weird, right? Well, it's the same thing with you too. And like, you keep me on my game, actually, because you're really good at what you do.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'm like, so what's he doing in this class? What can I take? So no, it goes both ways. And I think I don't know, you just sense people. And you just sense good people. Yeah. And it goes back to that.
Our program here at Rio is CPTP. We mentor students. We'll drop the link below so you guys can have access to it. And it will give you all the resources available that Rio Hondo has. Also for teachers that want to be part of this program. Again, we'll drop that information there for you. But what's so fulfilling for me, my career, is the wonderful people that I've met, like yourself, like Daniel, like Eric, Leah, and everyone else behind this, and all the mentees that I've had the privilege and honor to mentor them, my mentors that have helped me. Many times I have people ask, man, like, how are you involved in so many things? And I tell them, it's the relationships that I've built with people. It's the network that you build with people as teachers. And I remember telling you, having this conversation, don't get stuck in your class. Don't feel that I'm a teacher and I need to stay in this class, but rather venture out and meet other people and build networks. Go to conferences. Follow a podcast that will give you links to other people to help them see, you know what, one day I see myself running an early ed program. And I hope I do, because I would love to have that opportunity just to challenge people into their way of thinking of how children develop. I would love to have home visitors, and I would want people to see the things that we've accomplished and say, you know what, I can be better than them because we want change. And it's through those relationships. Final concluding thoughts to our audience out there. Jim?
Keep learning. Be hungry.
Don't think that a goal is a final destination. Keep on evolving and creating new ones. Don't stop dreaming. That's the only way you create them.
Yeah. Mine, it's always with combination of my mom and dad, is never lose faith and always fight on. Thank you guys very much. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you back soon.
capture the passion.